The wind howled through the skeletal trees at the edge of the Forgotten Vale, a place where secrets whispered through rustling leaves and echoes of tragedy lingered in the depths of its shadows. Within the crumbling remains of an ancient library, an air of long-abandoned knowledge clung to the dust motes dancing in the dim light filtering through shattered windows. It was there, among stacks of decaying tomes, that Samuel found a book unlike any he had ever seen. The tome rested on a pedestal, seemingly untouched by time or decay. Its cover was a strange amalgamation of materials that defied explanation. It shimmered darkly, shifting colors like a mischievous reflection, oscillating between black and deep crimson. A faint pulse seemed to emanate from it, a rhythm so subtle that Samuel thought he imagined it thrumming against his fingertips as he reached to touch the cover. When he opened the book, the pages fluttered frantically, the letters within swirling and reforming, never settling into any recognizable word. Samuel's heart raced, drawn to the chaos before him, an exhilarating pool toward knowledge long hidden. He could almost feel the weight of history and possibility within its pages, a tether of life and death spiraling into infinity. Days turned into nights as Samuel delved into the book's secrets. With every word he deciphered, he uncovered not just the past, the fall of empires, the deaths of heroes, the heart-wrenching tales of love and loss, but glimpses of the future. Events unraveling like strands of a web, detailing all that was yet to come. The more he read, the more he believed the book held the key to influencing fate. Yet, as he became consumed by its contents, a sinister shadow loomed on one of the pages. Etched in letters that twisted and danced, he spotted his own name, Samuel Hale. A shiver crawled up his spine, cold and unyielding. What followed was a series of events so horrific they seemed unbelievable, the ominous dawn breaking upon his name, promising a reckoning he could not fathom. The sheer terror was intoxicating. He could almost hear the book breathing, whispering to him in a voice that felt like a distant echo of doom. Desperation tinged every decision he made. He could not let this book bind him. No longer content to be a mere observer in a predetermined story, he tried to change the narrative. He quit his job, moved to a different town, immersed himself in every possible distraction meant to pull him away from the impending doom inscribed within those pages. But the more he struggled to rewrite his fate, the more events conspired against him. Seemingly random accidents became steps in a dance directed by the book. A car careening toward him when he thought he was safe. A roof collapsing just as he glanced back. The whispers grew louder, a cacophony bleeding through the thin veneer of reality. His attempts at change only propelled him closer to the culminating horror that loomed then. One repugnant day, he stumbled upon a page that sent his entire world spiraling into dread. The letters on the page coalesced into horrific clarity. It spoke of a night cloaked in tempest, a place he knew all too well, an abandoned park where shadows danced under the stars, and the bitter scent of forgotten dreams hung thick in the air. He read the words again and again at the hour of the witching moon. Beneath the decaying oak, Samuel Hale will meet his end by hands not yet known to him. The chill that washed over him felt like icy fingers rising from the depths of his soul. He was chained to this fate, like a marionette in the grip of an unseen puppeteer. The clock ticked ever closer to that appointed hour, its rhythm unrelenting. He tried to flee, he tried to hide, but regardless of where he went, the book followed, manifesting in whispers from the corners of his mind. Night fell, wrapping the world in darkness, the abyss that awaited him. Despite his efforts, a macabre compulsion beckoned him toward the park. Samuel felt an insatiable need to confront the dread waiting for him under the decaying oak, as if doing so was the only way to escape the horror. As he approached the grotesque spectacle of the gnarled tree, the air thickened with malignant anticipation. The shadows twisted and writhed. Dark shapes seemed to beckon at the edge of his vision. Heart pounding, Samuel fought against the dreadful pull, a siren's call at once familiar and foreign, drawing him closer. There, at the base of the oak, he searched frantically for answers in the suffocating dark, but the truth was nebulous, something just outside his grasp. Unbidden, the words of the book whispered back to him, resonating in the night. This is what must be. This is how it ends. And then he saw them, a group, faceless and shadowy, circling him. Their presence suffused with a chilling awareness that coursed through the very ground beneath him. He turned to flee, but the shadows surged, closing in with the inevitability of a dreadful tide. The oak creaked and shook overhead as Samuel's breath quickened to a manic pitch. Desperation surged as he lunged to escape, yet the pages of a life lived imprisoned by fate rustled in the depths of his mind. Strangely, an eerie calm washed over him, and he found himself accepting the inevitable. But as he fell to the ground, the world around him began to melt away. The library, the book, the shadows, contorting into every facet of darkness he had ever known. There, in the void, the book remained, waiting for the next curious seeker, daring them to uncover the legend once more, entrapping them in the same web of despair that had bound Samuel forever, an unending cycle of fate, fear, and fatalism. The Chronicle of Ruin awaited its next reader. The library fell into silence after Samuel's final breath, the echoes of his dread lingering in the air like smoke from a dying flame. The book on the pedestal remained open, its pages shivering slightly, soaked in the shadows of his fate. Would-be readers, unsuspecting and eternally curious, meandered through the ruined halls of the library over the years, brushing past the tomes that were little more than crumbling relics. But the Chronicle of Ruin awaited patiently, a predatory entity hidden in plain sight. The seasons turned, and so did fate. The years layered the dust in the library thickly, seemingly isolating that forbidden tome, until one stormy night a new wanderer crossed the threshold. Her name was Clara, an intrepid researcher with a penchant for the occult. The dark clouds hung heavy in the sky, casting the library in an even deeper gloom as she stepped inside, her breath misting the air before her. Clara's heart raced with both fear and excitement at the sight of the musty bookshelves, each one whispering with the weight of history. Little did she know that one among them was very much alive, a living chronicle of despair, ready to ensnare yet another seeker. As she ventured deeper, drawn by an unseen force, the winds outside began to howl louder, as if warning her to turn back. Ignoring the instinctual dread curling in her stomach, she continued her exploration. The deeper she went, the more she felt the air crackle with something electric, a tingling that promised revelations and terrors. Finally, she found it, the pedestal, the glimmer of that dark, shifting cover. Fascinated, Clara reached out and ran her fingers across the tome's surface. It felt warm beneath her touch, thrumming softly, as if anticipating her engagement. With trembling hands, she opened the book. The pages danced, swirling words and images spiraling around like smoke. Clara gasped as she recognized events from history battles fought. People lost. Her pulse quickened at the realization that this wasn't just a history book. It was alive, telling a story that continued to unfold. Yet, as she was captivated by its contents, it wasn't long before a sense of foreboding curled around her heart. In the eager yet fearful depths of her mind, she couldn't shake the feeling that the book was watching her, waiting for her to turn the pages. Hours slipped away, swallowed by the shadows, as Clara's curiosity proved insatiable. She read more, delving into stories of bitterness and tragedy, and in feathery whispers that licked at the corners of her awareness. The text shifted again. With growing dread, Clara stumbled upon a section detailing the events of a stormy night. Very night she found herself in the library. Now, her name flickered briefly on the pages, etched in letters that twisted and writhed. Clara Evans. The sensation it left in her lungs was akin to a punch. Panic surged within her veins as the word "end" appeared just below her name, accompanied by an image so grotesque it sent her reeling backward, forced against the wall. Clara struggled to comprehend the gruesome fate unfolding before her in print. Tornado-like winds swirled about her mind, and she felt the room swirl. The book beckoned her to read on, detailing her demise at the hands of an unnameable horror. Phantom of the past raging through the library's halls. The storm outside intensified, a harbinger of what was brewing within the pages before her. Desperation turned to resolve, as she realized she couldn't let her story end like that. With clenched fists and steely determination, she steeled her mind against the tide of dread clawing at her thoughts. If she had power over her destiny, she would alter it. She would not become another victim heralded by the pages of the curse-laden tome. She flipped through pages, searching desperately for any clue that could guide her or reveal a way to escape the fate inscribed for her. But the text shifted chaotically with her movements, almost as if the book relished her fear. Every time she thought she had a hold on her reality, it slipped through her fingers, leaving her breathless and overwhelmed. As Clara tried to resist the pull of the prophecy, she began to experience strange, phenomenous light whispers echoing through the library. Shadows elongated and warped into grotesque figures at the edges of her vision. The warmth in her gut turned cold, the sense of being watched growing unbearable. Was she anticipating persecution or simply conjuring it in her own mind? The line blurred beneath the weight of dread, yet, amidst the terror, she felt a flicker of hope. There must be a counterbalance to this dark book, a way to rewrite her fate. Clara read on, delving deeper into the dark heart of the tome, clinging to the anxiety-stained hope that buried beneath its chaotic passages could lie the key to escape. Words began to coalesce into something coherent as she fought against the tide. They spoke of resistance, bravery, defiance against predetermined endings. Clara saw threads of fate that connected her life to those mentioned in the tales, a web that intertwined with choice and consequence, gripping her mind as she made sense of despair as an act of rebellion. In a moment of revelation, Clara understood was not just about changing the future. It required a confrontation with the past. In that library, amidst shadows dancing devilishly as they awaited her downfall, she loudly proclaimed her defiance and confidence. With each utterance, the text on the page began to distort, letters shifting and warping as if repelled by her resolve. The wind outside whipped violently, rattling the windows as if the storm had come alive, craving the tempest. Shadows quivered and flickered, their movements frenzied, as Clara held steadfast, focusing her intent into the very fabric of the book. The whispers morphed, growing shrill and panicked, and the malevolent echoes turned into shrieks of rage. Clara could feel the book recoil as she repeated her assertions. She would not be a character in someone else's sinister narrative. She would not be a chapter in the Chronicle of Ruin. With a final, vehement cry of defiance, Clara reached out and slammed the book shut. The sound echoed like a thunderclap through the library, and an unnatural silence engulfed her. The shadows froze in mid-motion, suspended in time. The whispers suddenly snuffed out like a candle extinguished. Clara stood, breathless, yet empowered, the weight of the book heavy in her hands. She dared not open it again. The knowledge that its pages had not only imprisoned others, but sought to ensnare her, filled her with a dread that resonated deep within her bones. She knew she had escaped something deeply terrifying, and yet she could not shake the feeling that the history would continue. Cycling on in the shadows of the night, leaving the library, she felt a wind at her baka whisper of freedom that only slowly faded as dawn broke, clouds unraveling to expose a sunlit sky. The library stood behind her, a silhouette amongst the trees, forever a monument to those who had faltered against the weight of destiny. Clara walked away, invigorated by her brush with the darkness, yet beholden to an unyielding truth. Every shadow that flickers in the corner of her vision would always remind her of her brush with fate hand, of the Chronicle of Ruin that lay waiting for the next lost soul. She would share the story of the tome and her escape, warn others of the sinister lure. But even as she moved away from that library, she would carry the burden of knowing that knowledge is a double-edged sword, and some books should remain forever closed. Weeks after her escape from the library, Clara tried to return to her normal life. But the book, or rather, its shadows never truly left her. At night, when the lights went out and silence enveloped her home, faint whispers would echo from the dark corners of her room. Sometimes, in the mirrors, she would catch glimpses of faces staring back at her, faces that vanished as quickly as they appeared. But each time they seemed closer than before. Clara knew it wasn't just her imagination. The book, the cursed book, was still waiting for her. Even if its physical form remained in the library, its essence, or whatever it was, had followed her home. She began having nightmares, dreams of the library, where the book would open on its own, its pages fluttering toward her like the wings of a dark bird. Each time she woke up gasping, she was certain something was in the room with her. One night, when she could no longer bear the torment, Clara decided to return to the library. Perhaps if she destroyed the book, she could free herself from its grip. With a flashlight in hand and a heart full of dread, she made her way back to the Forgotten Vale. The cold wind howled, and the skeletal trees loomed like dark sentinels against the starry sky. When she reached the library, its broken door still hung open, as if waiting for her. Inside, the air was heavy and thick with dust. She swept her flashlight across the room and saw the pedestal. The book was still there, open and waiting. Its pages trembled faintly, as if stirred by her presence. Clara approached the book, but each step felt heavier than the last. The ground beneath her seemed to soften, as though the library itself was trying to swallow her. When she reached the pedestal, she grabbed the book. Its pages were warm, almost alive. She glanced at the text and saw her name, Clara Evans, repeated over and over, as if the book was calling out to her. Suddenly, she heard a sound behind Hertha, crunch of glass underfoot. Clara turned, shining her flashlight toward the noise. There was nothing there, but when she looked back at the book, she saw a tall, dark shadow stretching across the library wall. It was moving closer. Her heart raced. She clutched the book tightly and shouted, "You can't have me. I'm stronger than you." But the book responded not with words, but with a feeling that rooted itself in her mind. A feeling that told her, "You are not alone. You will never be alone." The shadows closed in from all sides. Clara slammed the book to the ground and began tearing its pages. But with each page she ripped, a piercing scream echoed through the library, as if the book itself was in pain. The air grew colder, and a fierce wind whipped through the room, as though nature itself was enraged by her actions. When the last page was torn, an eerie silence fell. Clara stood there, panting, and looked around. The shadows were gone, but something lingered in the era sense of incompleteness. The book was destroyed, but Clara knew this wasn't the end. As she left the library, she felt a strange lightness, but it was fleeting. On her way home, she noticed something in her pocket, a small scrap of paper, a fragment of the book. On it were the words, "You cannot escape fate." Clara tore the scrap into pieces and let the wind carry them away, but she knew it was only a temporary reprieve. The book might be gone, but the forces behind it, whatever they were, still lingered, and they were waiting. From that night on, Clara could never fully feel safe. Every time the lights went out, every time shadows moved in the corners of her room, she knew the book or something worse was still watching her, and perhaps, just perhaps, she wouldn't be able to escape it next time.